Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, just. Thank you very much for joining this session about T-levels and specifically about the digital element of T-levels. My name is Stella Pearson and I'm from the Department for Education, and I lead the division in the department that is leading the delivery of T-levels. So I hope you can all see a few slides on the screen. So I will run through my slides, and then we have colleagues from two awarding organisations that are delivering T-levels that will also speak to you. And then I think we have some time for questions. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so I hope you can all see that slide. So this gives a high-level overview about what T-levels are. So T-levels are new two-year technical qualifications for students between 16 and 19 who've just completed GCSEs. They've been developed with employers to make sure that the content of the qualification and the skills that students learn enable them to join the workforce once they have completed. The course is largely classroom-based, so about 80% in the classroom, but there's a substantial industry placement, so around 3 months that students spend out with an employer practicing the skills they have learnt in the classroom. And T-levels are a mixture of sort of practical tasks, projects, exams, and that work experience element. I mentioned there that ideally students move on to employment. Atif, there we go. Atif was just putting himself on mute. But students can also progress onto apprenticeships and further study as well. They are much larger than lots of existing qualifications, technical qualifications. So they're larger in size, and they have been designed to be more challenging and stretching too. But sort of size-wise, they're sort of equivalent to 3 A-levels. There's quite a broad range of content, and they're based on the same employer standards that we have based apprenticeships on, so there is read across between the two. Next slide, please, Suze. Slides are a wee bit slow.
Sorry, it's not advancing at all.
I can start talking about that one because oh, there we go. Okay, so this just gives you a little bit more detail about what the T-level program involves. So as I said, it's a 2-year program, about 1,800 hours over that 2 years. And each qualification part of the T-level is made up of a core and then an occupational specialism. And I'm sure that Jack will tell you a lot more about what's included in the qualification in their presentations. But each student will choose a specialist area that they want to focus on in their second year. The T-level also includes, as I mentioned, that industry placement, and that slide gives you a bit more detail placements. And all students have to have completed to a level 4 of English and maths. So whether that's a GCSE or functional skills, they need to have that by the time they finish their T-level. And there are a couple of additional requirements for some of the T-levels. So it might be a health and safety qualification or something like that. So a requirement where students will be moving into the workplace directly from their T-level. Next slide, Suze. Okay, so all T-levels include English, maths and digital skills that are relevant to the occupations that students have chosen. So obviously in this context, we're interested in the digital skills. So employers will have set out the digital skills that they think that students need to know to move into the workplace, and they've included that in the outline content that they've developed. And these are specifically taught in addition to the minimum maths and English requirements as well of the overall T-level, and they're taught in a contextualised way. So as I said, the T-levels are designed to help students move into work, and so they will be learning these skills in a practical way that they would need to be applied in the workplace. And the bottom of that slide there gives you some an idea of some of the general digital competencies that will be covered as part of the T-level. Thank you, Suze. So I mentioned earlier that T-levels are based on the same employer design standards as apprenticeships, but there are obviously some clear differences. Apprenticeships are paid employment, and the student spends 80% of their time in work and 20% in college, and that's obviously the opposite for a T-level. As I mentioned earlier as well, T-levels have much broader context, so an apprenticeship generally is based of those employer design standards, so one occupation. Most T-levels cover 2 or 3, so I always think about it as T-levels being sort of shallower but broader, and apprenticeships being narrower and deeper in terms of what's actually covered. But the idea behind both is that they support students to move on into sort of full-time employment. And again, comparing the T-level to current vocational qualifications, the main difference really again is sort of the focused on the employer design standards for T-levels, and that's not necessarily always the case for other vocational qualifications, and again sort of the size and rigor of the T-level and the industry placement element as well, the 9 weeks of face-to-face time in the workplace. Next slide, please, Suze. Okay, so this again just sort of emphasises those progression options. So students can move into skilled employment, or they can move into an apprenticeship as well. There's a little bit more detail there. So again, apprenticeship, it could be level 4 or it could be higher. They might move into a degree apprenticeship. There's a number of different routes they could move into. Next slide, please. And this one just gives a bit of more information about students' progression into HE. So T-levels attract the same number of UCAS points as 3 A-levels. So the table there just gives you a bit of extra detail on that. And we are working closely at the moment with higher education institutions to encourage them to accept T-level students. Obviously, higher education institutions set their own entry requirements, so it's up to them whether or not they want to accept T-level students. We've had lots of positive feedback so far, so we just want to make sure that that is reflected in the actual requirements the universities set. Next slide, Suze. So the first 3 T-levels were launched this September. So one in education and childcare, one in digital production design and development, and one design surveying and planning. And this slide just gives you a bit more detail on some of the occupations that students might move into having completed these T-levels. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to show you a video from some of our first students here, hoping the technology works.
I'm going to talk to you about the T-level industry placement. So for where I'd like to go, probably somewhere in programming, maybe web development. I've been doing that in class and it's kind of caught my eye a little bit. How does the work placement fit in with what I've been doing in class? Well, everything I'm doing in class, I can use in the industry, from the programming to the problem solving to the business context. I'm going to need all of that when it comes to going and working in the placement. So some of the key skills I'm going to get from this is confidence is going to go up. You're going to enhance your team building skills, and you're going to learn technical skills, because when you go on the placement, you're going to learn stuff from the employees. They're going to teach you things and you can use those skills. The main thing I'm going to take away from doing the work placement is definitely experience, because it's really going to help me when it comes to getting another job and going for my first interview or something, because I've already had that first-hand experience of doing the T-level placement work.
Thanks, Susie. So that's just one of our first T-level students. He's doing a digital T-level, and clearly from that video is really keen to get into his industry placement, and he's really clear about the advantages of doing that placement. So we have a group of students that we are working with at the moment to help us with some of our marketing materials to encourage other students to take up T-levels. So that's one of those little videos. Thanks, Suze. Next slide, please. So this slide just gives you a little bit more detail about those industry placements. So again, I said it, I mentioned earlier, it's about 45 working days, around 315 hours. The placement must be occupationally specific, so it needs to be in the same area as the specialism that the student has chosen. It needs to be in a real work environment. So the student needs to be working face-to-face with an employer, not remote, not working remotely, or working in sort of a different office. We have done a lot of testing about different models, and we've done a huge amount of stakeholder engagement and research about how to roll out industry placements. The T-level provider is responsible for finding the placement for the student. There's no expectation that students are paid. As far as we're concerned, this is a really important part of the students' learning and their education programme. And I think, from the students that we've spoken to, the placement is the thing that really attracts them to T-levels. And I don't think they're expecting it to be paid employment. They see it as a real advantage of doing this education programme. So the diagrams on the side there just give you some of the benefits that we see for the employer and for the student as well. So I think certainly for the employer, it's around, really being able to secure your longer term pipeline of your workforce. So it's a bit of a try before you buy opportunity. You can have students in for 3 months and really see how they perform in your environment and whether or not you'd like to take them on permanently. Give staff great opportunities for things like coaching and mentoring. But yeah, those are sort of the key things on that slide there that we see. And I think the benefits to the student are fairly obvious, really, and the kind of things that were set out in that video. Thanks, Suze. Okay, so this slide gives you just a little bit more detail about how T-levels will be rolled out over the next few years. We've rolled them out in a phased way. So we've got 64 providers delivering from 2021. So there'll be a further 7 T-levels available from 2021. Then another 87 coming on stream in 2022, and another 6 T-levels that will then be available. So there are 24 in total. And the boxes there, if you can see them, just set out which will be available when. I'm just looking for the digital box. So the bottom left gives you the 3 digital T-levels. So by 2021, so from this September, all 3 digital T-levels will be available. Thanks, Suze. Next slide, please. So this slide just gives you some links to find some further information. So there's lots of information on gov.uk. We have various resources for teachers and careers advisors as well on the Amazing Apprenticeships link. And we have a short T-levels. Yeah, so the site at the top there is for students and employers, the tlevels.gov.uk site. Okay, so that's the end of the slides, I think. I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were going to take questions specifically on the slides that I just run through before we moved over to the awardee organisations. Is that right?
And yeah, we're happy to do it that way.
So I don't know if there are any, I can't see any questions in the chat, but I don't know if anyone has any questions before we move on.
No, I haven't seen any questions to me. So we will have a major question and answer session at the end. So if anyone
Okay.
have any questions, pop them in the chat and then we can reserve them for later.
Okay, thanks very much. So am I handing over to Jackson or Atif next? Jackson.
So, hello, my name's Jackson Armstrong and I am the Digital Subject Specialist at NCFE. I think I am going to roughly take you on a brief overview of the T-levels that we're developing, specifically the digital ones. So, as Stella has just outlined there, the T-levels have a core component or an overall pathway, and then an occupational specialism. So the two T-levels that NCFE are developing are digital support services and digital business services. They are the sort of the pathways that they go into, and each of them has occupational specialisms. Digital support services has 3, so that's digital infrastructure, network cabling, and digital support. And then digital business services has the data technician. So as a sort of overview flavor of them both, obviously your digital support services, you're looking at your sort of physical networking, traditional network courses that centers used to deliver. It's that sort of flavor. The digital infrastructure is obviously the sort of design and implementation of networks and systems. Network cabling is that physical laying cables, terminating them to EIA, TIA standards, the sort of technical aspects and physical installation of networks. And then digital support has more of a sort of customer facing, first line technician sort of vibe. I always imagine it or talk to centers as if it's a spectrum, and you can imagine those different roles within the industry that sort of lend themselves to those occupational specialisms. Digital business services is effectively a data science, a data analysis T-level, as sort of indicated by the data technician occupational specialism, dealing with a lot of the sort of data aspects, a lot of the exciting stuff that's coming out. So you've got your predictive and prescriptive analytics, your statistical methods, how they are stored in sort of data warehousing and pipelines, the sort of legislative and sort of standard implications that go with that. So there's a range of things there, and even leading into sort of some of the really exciting sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence sort of vibes that data give off. So 2 really exciting areas, areas that centers will be quite used to delivering. So they sort of bleed into the sort of how we develop them. And I'd like to take a minute just to talk about that. As Stella again touched on, they are very employer driven. What we're trying to embed here with learners and skills, another route to the traditional A-level route where they can do sort of skills and more practical abilities. So we have a process of that. Now, the intent of that sort of technical education is fantastic, and one that at NCFE we're continuing to sort of work on, and how we implement that intent. So the process we do is we don't just sit in isolation and develop these qualifications. We engage with a lot of employers and stakeholders. I mean, some of the big names on the screen for you there, like Fujitsu and Sellafield and the National Innovation Centre for Data, we pull them in, we ask them to sort of contextualize their job roles or what they think learners would need within these job roles. And we sort of try and distill that, as it were, into content. We then get it validated by employers. And I think it's worthwhile saying it's, you know, put some really big companies up on screen, but we also engage with the sort of the smaller local companies within areas, because we understand that centres have access to local employers, and it'll be some of these small local employers that will really sort of help with the industry placements, help with the sort of contextualization, guest speakers, projects for these learners. All content is reviewed by centres, and that involves sort of GLH and the sort of, okay, so we've got this employer content, how is that actually being turned into specification and content that centres can deliver and teach? Because that can be quite a sort of complex relationship to translate that. So that's how we sort of go about that sort of system and how we sort of develop the specifications. We work quite a lot with centres to develop relationships as well and sort of bleed that into it, because again, that will help industry placements and that sort of enrichment activity. So the components, and Stella's touched a little bit on this, so I won't sort of go on about this too much. But we have this outline content, which is obviously developed by iFate and the employers, and we as an AO take that and interpret that and turn that into a specification using the employers, as I've just said. We at NCFE have skills and knowledge statements. So we have knowledge statements which tend to be more sort of theory based, and they reinforce skills for our learners. And the end point is our learners are learning these industry career relevant skills that they can take into their industry placements and then into the future into their employment. Core content is obviously is assessed by exams to reinforce that sort of theoretical knowledge and that theory knowledge. And then the rest of the assessment is through employer set projects, whether that be the actual employer set project or the occupational specialism project, both of which are written in sort of collaboration with employers, again, to make sure that the tasks we're asking them to do are sort of relevant to the industry. And again, all of these tasks, as shown by Stella's video there, are reinforced by the industry placements and work that they do within those industry placements. So you get that contextualization across academic and the working environment. Learner progression. So we do a lot of work making sure that we have further qualifications. So we're developing sort of data qualifications and networking qualifications, cybersecurity qualifications, all of which our learners can progress onto. A lot of work with centres around apprenticeships, university links. The idea here isn't just to put them on a T level. We also sort of look at transition programs and talk to centres about transition programs to work from level 2 to level 3 and then go on to further progression. So it's a whole sort of package we're looking to offer and develop to support these learners. Again, as touched on by Stella, they do carry significant UCAS points. So again, the opportunity for learners to progress is there as well. And that is, albeit a brief overview, is the sort of NCFE T levels. So if you'd like any more information, obviously my name and email, and James Lane, who's the sector manager for digital, is on screen. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line. I think I am passing over to Atif now, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely, Jackson. It's Atif. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
No bother. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. Okay. That's strange. I was here a second ago, and now my PowerPoint is not showing up. Okay. Maybe if I do it this way around, let's just try and share the screen like this. Can anyone confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, that's coming through fine.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great stuff. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Atif Khan. I'm the sector manager for Pearson, and I was in the unique position of being one of the first individuals working on the first tier level that came out, so of construction and digital. And I'm here just to talk about a little bit about the employment focus of the digital production design T level, which is all about software development, basically. One thing that I would just mention is that the element of employer engagement has probably been one of the highest that I've ever seen on any qualification development for specifically for the Pearson qualification. And I appreciate in NCFE have also done a lot of work with employers, and I think that's a really key theme that's cutting through all of the T-level developments, is that the employers need to have an active voice, and that was something that Pearson and I was spearheading and championing. But we had some really interesting different experiences from different employers, such as the ones that we've mentioned here. So Arm, that create microprocessors, BBC, BT, Cisco, who a lot of us know about from networking and infrastructure, and CompTIA, who are a industry standard organization that have their own vendor qualifications, such as A+ and those types of qualifications that a lot of us recognize. And we got these employers a round table to understand, what are the key things that they're looking for this specification. And the one of the things that we were really keen to understand from employers was what was their idea of threshold competence, which was a term that was being used quite frequently at the time of development, for us to really understand what does an individual learner need to be able to do on their first day. They don't have to be masters, they just need to be able to walk in and be able to hold a conversation or be part of a communication or a meeting about software development, app development, web development. So that threshold competence was really quite, our North Star in terms of guiding us for the specification. So the skills that we kind of focus on were given to us by the standard, but we fleshed them out and we really understood exactly what employers wanted from their employees when it came to the level of competence in these skills. So in the core component, which is considered to be core across all digital T levels going forward in the future, we've identified the bullet points that you can see in the first column on the left, including business context, which is all about making sure that you're not just about digital, you're also about being able to speak clearly about your digital needs in a way that's, appropriate and understandable by people who might not be digital experts. So that business context and how your digital solution might be affecting the profitability of an organization or reducing the costs. And it's also, we're looking into culture, data. I'm not going to go into all of these. We have a number of, we've obviously expanded upon all of these elements in our specification, and we've created a lot of support materials for teachers to help deliver it. But I think the important thing is that these were the skills that employers were asking for us to develop and incorporate within our qualification. And that's basically what we've done. And on the right-hand side, which is most likely the skills that learners will be developing in year 2, is the occupational specialism. So, so here it was mainly about understanding software development, not just looking at digital sector as a whole, but specifically looking at the life of a software developer and understanding what are the key important things that these individuals need to be able to do. And this was mainly about understanding your client's needs, being able to create digital solutions that met those needs, the iterative process of almost trial and error when you're creating something, taking to the client giving you feedback, refining your product, and then going back and forth in an agile way. And we cover those types of project development methodologies as well. And I think the important thing is that our assessment is not just about knowledge retention, answering question papers. Yes, we do have question papers that the individuals have to do, but in year 1 and in year 2, we have really robust employer-based projects where the learners have to, understand a specific client's needs and then create solutions to develop an actual working solution, and all of the processes and the ups and downs that go in between, first concept through to final product. And it's a really interesting and engaging way of learning those skills. When it comes to employment opportunities, I think that the reason that the government decided to roll this specific T-level first was probably because of the amount of employer need there is in the market for these skills. So if you look at, what type of jobs are on trend when it comes to employment opportunities in the digital sector, you'll find that the jobs that I've highlighted on this slide, including software development technician, junior developer, junior web developer, programmer, automated test developer, all these types of software related roles are really highly sought after at the moment. And, we expect them to continue to be sought after, whereas employers, bring in these skills for programming as the world becomes more digital, as other industries that are not traditionally digital start incorporating more digital technology into their companies. So we feel that these are the key skills gaps in the UK. And I think it's really important for us to be able to nurture and grow our own in terms of encouraging young people to get involved in the digital sector. So there's a whole plethora of different roles that people can apply for that all align to this specific T level. But job roles obviously aren't the only option. There is work going on behind the scenes with higher education institutes where we're talking to them about whether they'll be accepting T-level applicants and and explaining to them and teaching those higher education institutes how different T levels are to anything that they've probably experienced before. And I think that's something that is a really important message for us to get through. And of course, the size of the qualification makes it in line with 3 A levels. So it's a significant qualification over 2 years. But, in terms of higher education opportunities afterwards, learners can go on to do a software engineering, Bachelor of Science, or a computer games programming, BSc, or computer science, BSc. So a number of different avenues and opportunities for them to walk into in higher education at the end of it as well. But of course, the T levels is mainly aimed at getting people into employment. But the good news is that because the UCAS points, opportunities for higher education are not closed. So I think it's a really good, robust overall qualification that offers you the best of both worlds, and the work experience element of it, the mandated work experience element of it, we feel is going to be really, really popular with young people. And it's something that employers will definitely value as well to ensure that their learners who are coming into them have that experience. So that was it. So I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much.
So thank you to all our speakers for today. If there are any questions, feel free to post in the chat. We've got a couple of minutes left before the close of the session at 12:30. Just a reminder, there is a poll. So if you found the content of this session helpful, jump on over to the polls panel and give the session a rating. You can also download all of the presentations for today on the CDI website, and there's a link in the chat. So we've got a question from Paul Cornwell. I'm not sure who's best to answer this. Could a student take a T level with another qualification alongside, for example, a single A level?
Hi, Dan, I can try and take that. I hope you can hear me. So we don't think that there is time really in the curriculum, sort of in the week, to be able to do a T level and another A level. I think at a push, if it was an extremely able student and the college was willing to try and sort of timetable it, I think it would be possible. I don't think we'd expect to see it as standard. As I mentioned in my slides, students need to have both their English and maths GCSE or functional skills. And so we do expect some students to be studying one of those potentially alongside their T level if they haven't got it before they start their T level. There was another question as well about possible to do 2 T levels. So it's sort of the same thing applies, that there isn't really time in the week to do 2, that one is sort of big enough time-wise.
Thank you, Stella, for clarifying that. If there are any other questions, please pop them in the chat.
So presumably, Dan, I was just going to ask if there aren't any other questions, that the slides will be circulated, won't they? So if people want to find more information, they can follow all the links and things that we've all had in our slideshows.
That's right. So yeah, all the slides are available on the CDI website. We post the link. I'll post the link again in the chat just so people have access to it. We'll also do a recording, which will be made available after the close of the event once the video has been processed. We've got another quick question from James Davidson. If a student has to take a break from studying or is unable to fully qualify, can they still gain some kind of certificate to proceed with their education?
So if a student isn't able to complete all of the elements of the T-level, so they need to have the qualification, the industry placement, the English and maths, and any other mandatory qualifications, if they aren't able to complete one of those bits, then they get, so instead of getting a full T-level certificate to say they've completed the full T-level, they get a sort of statement of achievement. So that comes from the Institute for Apprenticeships, as well as the full qualification comes from the full certificate comes from the Institute, but the sort of statement of achievement will also come from the Institute, so it will look the same. But instead of saying that the student has sort of completed their full T-level, it will list the bits that they have completed. I think, like with other sort of level 3 qualifications, if, you know, for example, a student is unwell and they need to sort of retake, I think that sort of approach applies to a T-level as well. So perhaps if the student only did the first year and wasn't able to do their second year for whatever reason, they would have the ability to sort of to go back to college for a third year and pick up where they left off. Students have up to 2 years after they're meant to complete to do all the bits of the T-level. So perhaps they finish after 2 years and they haven't quite managed to get their maths GCSE. They can keep retaking their maths, and then when they do get their maths, they will get their full certificate, even if it's after the end of that 2 years. And that might apply maybe to the industry placement. Maybe they hadn't quite got 315 hours, and so maybe they carry on during the summer holiday or something after they're due to, after they would have normally finished. They can then pick up their certificate when they have completed all of those elements.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jackson and Heath as well. I think that was great. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. We've got a short lunch break, and the conference will resume at 1:15 p.m. for the next panel session. Please take this opportunity to grab a drink, grab something to eat, and maybe check out the expo and the networking side of the conference. Thank you.
Many thanks.
Thank you.